So the start of it will be a little slow because it's going to be me setting up the virtual machine, getting in. It'll be really slow if I have to update. So what I want to do is just finish up that, basically finish up that service, and then next week we'll do the client for the service. It shouldn't be that hard. So I'm gonna get in here. And we'll get going. I did post what we did last time on GitHub, and I'll post after I'm done today. I'll update the GitHub, and then hopefully I was in time to do some troubleshooting, like that error. There's something there, but I can't see it. But you can kind of bypass it, as I said, and I will accept that. You guys have a good weekend. This is the hardest time of the year in some ways because it's just been a long year and the weather's finally starting to change. For what it's worth, I'd rather stay home too. All right, mine wants to update, but hopefully it won't do it for a while. Looks like you're still updating. Come on, you can do it. It shouldn't take that long to load. Hello. There it goes. So the first thing I'll do once I can get in there is I'll just load what we were working on last time. I'll talk through it real quickly again, and then we'll move on. I think I'd be used to watching that little spinning thing by now. Okay. This was much more complicated than we needed. As I said, it was partially because I wanted to show you how to do make your own class, your own data class, because it's really useful to do that in the assignment. First, I'm going to go back to the interface. So basically the interface, you guys remember what each of these are doing? They're basically they're creating a contract. When you implement an interface, that means that you have to create methods for each of these, right? These, in the interface, these don't have, oh, this is the book info. I want to go up higher. These are this is the interface, where you basically have to create these methods in any class that implements the interface. Does that make sense? You're creating a contract. And where this is important for what we're doing is that when we create the website next week that talks to this service, this will be passed to the website. And so the website will know, basically, there's a login method we can use. There's a register reviewer method we can use. There's a get books we can use. And there's a get books by author. Does that make sense? Rather than pass the whole body of the program, it just passes the interface because it's lighter weight. It's easier to read, and it tells you everything you need to know about what's in the class. In the service contract, this is the service contract, and we have the operation contracts. Only things that have these operation contracts will be visible to the web page. You can create methods that are not operation contracts, but they're only local. They're into the service. They won't be used in the web page. Does that make sense? Not that you care a whole lot, but these are called compiler directives. Right? So there are a few of them that we'll use along the way. They basically tell the compiler to treat this as something that will be passed. Same thing with data contract. That is another compiler thing. This is where you're creating your own classes, kind of like the classes that were created for you by the data entities thing. You can add classes. Sometimes the classes of the data entity things creates, the data entities wizard creates, are not immediately useful. And the reason I did this is actually absolutely unnecessary for what we're doing, because the authors are actually included anyway. It's the default. But in Community Assist, when you do your assignment, you'll probably want to create a data contract for the registration for the person, because it covers 3 tables, right? It covers person address, and contact. And you could pass all 3 things to the method, but it's easier to create like one class and pass it as a single bundle. All right, does any of this stuff make sense? I know it's been a weekend to forget it. And so what the service does, again, we have all the methods. The first one I did was just to get the book info for books. And again, as I said, this is way more complicated than it needs to be, but it kind of gives you the pattern for what you'll need to do for that if you make your own class. Testing, we'll do a real quick test again, and I'll just show you the testing. So this is one of the things about a service is that basically it has no interface. I'm just curious if it'll run after that error notice. When you tie into a service, it has a web address, but it doesn't have any forms or anything to show it. But it does come in Visual Studio anyway with a test environment where you can test your services methods and make sure that they work. Not 100% sure. And again, the red X's there look alarming, but that just means that we haven't created asynchronous views of these methods. And we're not going to, because that gets complicated. To become asynchronous, you have to thread things. Anybody know what that means? Basically split the code off into separate threads, which would be processed by the processor separate from each other. That actually is pretty easy to do. The hard part is bringing them back together. So asynchronous means that the page could keep doing whatever it needs, and the reply will come whenever. Synchronous means that the page stops until the reply comes back. So the only one of these that we have is get books. Any of the others, if we run them, would just throw an error because there's nothing in them. So get books doesn't take any parameters. We'll do a couple that take parameters just to show them. But if I invoke it and do OK, hopefully, so this is a sign that it worked. Though this might surprise you. What's that? These are the index numbers for essentially the list that we're returning. And if you go into, let's just take number 3, and I click on that, it'll say, book entry date, book ISBN, book title. And if I click under book authors, it says it's a length of 1, It has an index of 0, and it'll get down to Brian Greene as the author. So you have to open these up to see what the content is. But the fact that there were numbers there means that it worked. Does that make sense? Each one of the things stored in this list is a complex object. So it has a lot of internal states. And you can look at those internal states by just clicking through the arrows there.
Did you just run the program to get that dialog box?
Yeah, so just run. One of the things is you have to be in the service. So
Oh, like in the...
yeah, you need to have the cursor in the service. If you're in another page, I think even this, it might run from the interface. I'm not sure. Let's see if it runs from the interface. No. So if you run from the anything but the service, you're going to get this. Error 403 forbidden. You'll get that from literally every file you have in the service except the service file itself. Does that make sense? But from the service here, it'll run. The other place, I'm just going to go to the Solution Explorer for a moment. There's a service file down here. This will also run it. This, I'm just going to show you what's here. This is not one you created. It's just a little directive. All right, why are you spinning? I just wanted to close it so you could see what it says here. This file is only important if you rename something. If you rename your services, you need to rename it in this file too, and it won't do it automatically. Spinning, spinning, spinning. All right. That was just to show you something, but let's see if it eventually quits spinning. And then we'll move on. Does the idea of the service make sense to you? If it doesn't, let me know. It's okay if it does, sort of. So again, while it's spinning there, this idea of a service, so you have your web server. I have a get pen. You have your web server. And in the Microsoft world, that would be IIS, Internet Information Server. When you have a service stored there, you know, it's basically there, and then you have your web page somewhere else. And it can request this service. It will pass you the interface. And then you can, it actually, in the Microsoft world, it's really easy. It will actually create a class based on that interface. And then you can, you know, contact the method and get the results back. The service will be talking to a database, which doesn't have to be on the same machine at all. It could be elsewhere. The advantage of this is that the web page is interacting with the web server, the web service, and the service is interacting with the database. The web page doesn't need to know anything about the database, doesn't need to have any permissions on the database. You know, it's a much safer structure in general than directly touching the database with the web page. Is this ever going to stop? I think this is partially, it said that a restart was going to be required for updating. So I think it's a downloading stuff. Come on. This is why it'll take a long time. This won't take very long if I can make this work. worst case scenario, I could whiteboard it. Our whiteboarding skills are kind of, I'm sloppy on the whiteboard, as you can tell. Come on. What is it doing? Is it? It's frozen there. So it seems to be okay out here. There it goes. Wow, it cleared. So I'm going to go back to the service. And I'm going to go down and let's do the login. Okay. So one of the things we did in the service, as I said, this is much more complicated than it needs to be. We created a list with the book info. We could have done a list with just book, right? But we did book info. And then for each book we're in the results set of this query, we're going through and assigning the values to this class that we made. And then we're adding that to, well, first we're getting the authors too. We have an inner loop where we get the authors, and then we add the book to our list. And then we return our list of books, right? So basically and the neat thing about a list is when we get to the web page, all you have to do is say data source equal books, right? And it will populate. It's a nice thing about a Microsoft tools is that they're data aware and you don't have to loop through them and create your own table structure and things like that. Though you can if you want. All right, so the login is going to be pretty much the same as it was in the last assignment. Also, I want to note we've hooked into the data entities at the top at a class level variable. That means it's available everywhere. Python doesn't do this. It's one of my complaints. You can't do a class level variable. You have to say self all the time and pass self now. All right, so our login. We don't have to reconnect. So we have our string user and string password. So I'm just going to do, first I'm going to do int, because we're going to return something, and I'll just say key, and I'm going to say it equals 0. All right, so I'm just initializing the variable. If you want to get rid of the little red thing there, you can say return key. Okay. And then in between, I'm going to do a little bit of a query. So I am going to do, first I'm going to do, so it's int, let's say result equals DB, right, our database context. And we have our stored procedures, including login. And I'm going to pass it the user and the password. So this is exactly like what we did before, except we passed in directly the text boxes. Does that make sense? And then I'm going to do this query. So actually, so I'm going to do if result not equal -1. Remember, that's how we know if it failed, it'll equal -1. So then I'll do this, and then I'm going to do var k, not k. What do we want to call this? Let's call it user key equals, and I'm going to do a parentheses here, from k in db.reviewers, because we want the reviewer key, right? Where k dot username, because here we actually have a username, unlike in Community Assist where it's just their email, right? The username is the email in Community Assist. I'm going to do dot equals, and then in parentheses I'm just going to say user, so the user that gets passed in. And then I'm going to say select k dot reviewer key, and then outside the parentheses I'm going to do first or default. So it's only going to return one value, either the first value or the default value, which would it should only return one value. It should only return a single value. And I'm going to say key equals int user key. Okay. And that's the whole login. We can test it here in a moment. What doesn't make sense there? And it would be fair if none of it makes sense. So that's okay. What does make sense? So if the result is -1, then the key is going to equal 0, right? So in the web page, if we call this method and the key equals 0, we know it's an invalid login. So if it's valid, we're going to go get the user, the key, or the user. And so I'm just doing a query from reviewers. Remember, it pluralizes things. So reviewers is a collection of review. So each review is a single row. It'll be a list of all the reviewers, basically. And we want the reviewer where the username is equal to the username that they passed in here. And then we're going to select the key and the first one, if there's more than one. There shouldn't be more than one, but it varies with the first one. And then we're going to cast that user key to an int and assign it to our key so that when we return the key, if it was a valid login, it should reflect their user key. Does that make sense? I'm going to test it, but I need to remember somebody's password and username. So I'm going to go to book review and tables and reviewer. I'm going to right click and just do show table data. So we do have John Doe. We have Wally Lewis with W. Lewis Pass. Why don't we do that? So the reviewer key should be 3. The username is W. Lewis, and it's wlewis@gmail. And then the password is W. Lewis Pass. Can I remember that? So I'm going to go back to the service, not that service, this one. And I'll run it again, and we'll just test this one. One of the things that I suggest too is that you test them one at a time. Build them one at a time, test them one at a time. And in general, I advise that whenever you're doing things, test each thing one at a time. Because when you do have errors, it's good to know that everything you've done up to this point was good. So if there's this error or something you've added since the last check, does that make sense? It helps localize where the errors would be. So I'm going to do login. And notice this time there's some parameters up here. Right? So it was it W. Lewis? All lowercase? What? How do you which? You just run it from the service. And then I double clicked. All right, so we'll kill it. So you run it from the service, just run, and then you double click the login, the one you want to test. So when it comes up, there's login here. At the top, I just double click the login. Okay, and then I'm going to do, if I get this right, and then it was W. Lewis Pass, I hope. Was there a capital P or anything in there? It was all lowercase. If I'm wrong, I'll get a 0. No, I got 3, which is correct. Right, it was, the 3 was the user key. So this is the test that shows you that it worked, right?
Now, what if it was an invalid password?
It should give you 0. So let's change this to a capital P. That should be enough to make it invalid. And see, now it returns 0. So any invalid password should return 0.
So then we don't need an else statement.
No, you don't need an else statement because we've set it to 0. It'll either be assigned a new number or it'll just pass through at 0. In the other one, now, like when we do the web page, there will be an else. We won't have to do this query, but basically we'll say, you know, if the key is not equal to 0, then we can do this, else, you know, invalid. So this is almost identical to the code we did in the web page, right? So how's that going? Did you need, you guys got it down there? All right.
I have errors from last time, so.
Oh, from last time?
Yeah, from the last class.
Author, continue author. Shouldn't be new global author, should just be author. Did you add author to the book? Well, it's not seeing book. It's not seeing. Let's look at your diagram. Look at there. Save it. Single. You're okay. And you should get another. Okay. Go back and see if it recognizes the book. That's okay. I fixed most of it. For some reason, it wasn't seeing the data entities. All right, so we've only got a couple more to do, and again, they're pretty simple. We can do the register reviewer. Again, this is actually easier than the community assist, just because there's fewer fields. Most of yours looked pretty good on the, and they're really hard to debug, as you found. So I'm going to do int. So I'll do bool result equals, do we want to assume true? It's probably a mistake to assume true, but I'm going to. I'm going to say return result. All right, so I'm going to say int r equals USP. So actually it's DB. So we got to go to the database context. And then down at the, we have our USP reviewer, new reviewer. And so we need to put in all of these things. Oh, I can't do R. Let's do REV. So I want to go back. I want to get that again. All right, so we could do R dot reviewer username comma. I'm going to break this just so it's on screen. R dot first name. R dot last name. I'm going to press enter again. R dot, so we got last name, email. R dot plain password. And was that all of it? I think so. So R, when we pass this in from the web page, we're going to have to create a reviewer object. Oh no. Schedule. And we want to do it later. How do I set it for defer? Oh yes, defer. Learn more. No, I don't want to learn more. I just want to go to I just want to make sure that it isn't going to do this in the middle of things. Waiting for install, wait for install. I looked at that. It didn't actually have any way to, it had a thing to defer and learn more.
Just make you select the drop down menu.
All right.
Maybe if you just like X out and just keep notifying them. And
Yeah.
just keep putting it out.
I hope so. Okay, so we've got the login. Let's try the register real quickly. And then we've only got one more to do anyway. So we might make it before it kills everything. So I'm going to try the register one. Again, once you've done these, it's a good idea to test them. And if it succeeds, it should say true, and then we can go to the database and look if we want. So this is Register Reviewer. And so it has all these fields, right? So I need to give it a plain password. They're not necessarily in order, which is sort of a pain. Plain password. I'm going to do test pass. And the date entered, I think it's actually going to be provided. The email, test@test.com. Reviewer first name, about test. Hash password will be provided. Key will be provided. Key code will be provided. Last name, test last. Username, tester. We don't need to worry about reviews. I did first name, hash. I think that's good. Let's invoke it and see. So it says true. So that means it should be there. And if you want, you can be content with that, but I kind of want to, oops, I don't want properties. I want to do reviewer data and just send it again. So there's tester, test last, so it's all there. And it hashed the password. So that worked. Any questions? What's wrong one again? So we're just using the built-in store procedure. If anybody wants, at some point, I can show you what that procedure looks like. You know, it's just SQL. If you took the SQL class, we wrote procedures like it. But it makes it a lot easier to do things like hashing the password and things. Otherwise, it would take a lot of code. We'd have to figure out how to hash and do things. Okay, the last one is to get books by author. And this one I'm just going to do books. I'm not going to do the book info thing we have. So we need, well, actually it says it returns a book info class, and that actually doesn't make sense. I'm going to change this because it's going to be more, it could be more than one book. So I'm going to make it a list, and I'm just going to make it a book. What do I have to do if I do that?
You have to change the name.
I got to change the name in the interface. Yeah. So I need to go back to the interface, the iBook service, and I have to change this from book info to list book. So I'm going to go back to the service, and up at the top, if you don't match, you'll have an error here. It'll have to be red underlined if they don't match, right? It'll say that you're not implementing the interface. So whenever you change something in the methods, you have to change it in the interface and vice versa. They have to match. All right, so what we want to do, and this is actually easier, as I said, if we do it just as book. So I'm going to do var equals from b in db.books. And we might have to do a little bit of manipulation here. Might have to come back just to say. I am going to where, let's see if I can do b dot authors I wonder if I do from a in b dot authors, where a dot author name equals author name select, and I'm going to try to just select B, actually not no parentheses there. I'm also going to try something, although I don't know that it will allow this. I'm going to try to turn this to list. And then just return so it's happy there. I don't know if it'll work. So what I'm doing is I'm doing a query. Now it understands the relationship between books and authors. Notice that this is B and this is A in B, right? So this is for all the authors that are stored in this particular book, right? Because a book can have multiple authors. So there's an array of authors in the book. And this is saying for every author in the array of authors for this particular book, right? So it's going to kind of loop through them and look for these. If an author name equals the author name, then add it to the list. And this is converts the results to a list, which you can then presumably use to attach to a grid and things like that. Let's test it. If it works, if it doesn't work, then we have to do some looping and stuff. So let's see if it works. Do you need a moment with that? Yeah. You're what? Sure. Okay, so that'll be another one. So actually, the only thing we did it's just a game. Okay, I'm gonna test. Yeah. Which one?
Whatever the last one.
The register? Oh, so what I did is I changed this to list book, and in the interface, I went up to get books by author. I did list book. I changed it from book info. It was just book info, but I changed it to list book. Did you get that? It's a pain, I know, when I change things. As I was looking at that, the other one would have only returned a single book, and that would have been problematic. This will return a list of books. I'm going to try running and testing this. Let's see what we get. And then we're done with it, actually. And I'll post it the rest. I'll update the GitHub. So when I do get books by author, it's going to take an author name. I'm going to do Neil Gaiman. Invoke. Okay. Do I get anything? I got nothing. But I might have spelled his name wrong. Let me check on some authors. So I'm going to look at an author. I'm just going to get the data. I did it as A-I-A-N, which I'm not sure that's spelled right, but that's all right. Let's go back to the service and try it again. It actually will run from this one as well. Okay. It may not like the list that I'm doing. As I said, it may not. Let me see what it's saying. When you get this kind of error, a couple of things you can do is you can expand it by hitting that corner. And if you go to the HTML view, it becomes a little bit more readable. Though that's still not particularly readable. An error occurred receiving the HTTP. This could be due to a service endpoint. This is actually very generic. I'm going to change the method a little bit, and I think it'll work. So I was hoping this would work, but I don't think it did. So I'm going to take the parentheses and the two lists off, do a semicolon right there. I'm going to create a list book, I'm going to call it books equals new list book books. Now this could get really confusing. Oh, actually that just needs parentheses. Because I'm naming this books, there's already something in there called books, but it has a capital B. If that confuses you, maybe think of a different name. So what I'm going to do is now I'm going to loop through for each var in BKS. I'm going to create a book. I need another variable for book. Anybody got another variable? I got B, I got BK, I got BKS. What? BO, I could do that. So I'm going to create a book object. I'm going to say BO dot book title equals BK dot book title, and to say BO dot book entry date equals BK dot book entry date. BO dot ISBN equals BK dot ISBN. Now I think the authors might have been the problem. BO dot authors equals BK dot authors. I don't know how it'll treat that authors thing. Once I've got this, I'm going to book. So I'm going to do books add BO. All right, I was hoping to avoid this loop. So it's looping through the result set here, and it's creating a new, basically we're just creating a book object for everything in the result set and then putting it into that list. I've had the problem, that error, I've seen it before when I was trying to be a little more, just seems like you should be able to do the B to list. But let's try this. If it works, then we can linger on it another minute or two. All right, so we get books by author. Still doesn't like it. I'm going to get rid of the authors down here. And then try it again. The trouble is, I think that it's a list inside of a list with the authors, so I think that's what's confusing it. Yeah, so that worked. If I got rid of the author, which you don't necessarily need to show if you're looking for a particular. So there's never where, there's the ISBN, and there's the entry date. So I did get the book. The one thing about watching me mess with this that I would like you to get is the fact that sometimes you have to mess with it to make it work. You know, that it doesn't necessarily, I mean, if something doesn't work, try some variations. I thought I could maybe get the author, but I can't actually get the author's name in there. I mean, the multiple authors, because if I do that, it's a separate, I might be able to do it if I made two lists, but you can only return one thing, so. You look like you have a question formulating.
So this can't have other lists in it.
You can have other lists in it, but you can only return one thing. Does that make sense?
I'm trying to return the list for this one.
It was, the thing that it was crashing on was that basically we had a list inside of a list, and it didn't like it. So, I don't,
It's possible that Apple's is.
well, so there's another thing we could do. It might have worked if I had stuck with the book info idea, because the list is contained in an object and you'd be returning a single object. Do we want to try it with the book info? Like, it's actually would be a very simple change.
You mean a list of book info or just one book info?
So a list of book info. So basically we just need to change wherever it says book. And then down here we need to create book info. All right, and then, except I got rid of the K. And then BK in books. Oh, the date has to be cast or turned to string. So I'm just going to do two. I'm going to just do short date string. And then I'm going to try to add the authors. Oops. And see if it works with the book info. So I'm going to do BO dot book author equals BK dot authors. Okay. Cannot implicitly convert. All right. So the error message that I was getting when it was a red underline is that you can't implicitly convert a collection to a list. But there's an explicit conversion. Let's see if it works. This is just experimenting right now. Again, just to see if it'll allow the list inside of this one. All right, come on. There were build errors. What is the build error?
You change the interface.
Oh, exactly. Thank you. We changed this, right? So I have to go back to the interface and change it here too to book info, list book info. So let's go back here. Now let's see if it runs. Okay. Slowly. So I'm going to try it again, books by author. Although I kind of want, well, I'll just do Neil Gaiman for now. There's another author. I want to try a book with multiple authors too. So is it going to crash or give it to me? Yeah, it just doesn't like lists inside of lists. Although it does it with some of the other objects. Let me look at the error message more explicitly. Just like with the book, I'm sure it'll work with book info if we take the authors out. All right, fail already. Okay. This is at a different place. The underlying provider failed on open. That is a little bit confusing. If you do view detail, it gives you can get tons of detail about every error. Actually, this is saying it's coming from the database. Book in UKS. Select book key as book key. Select book title as book title. Why is that giving me an error? Huh. That's a weird SQL statement. I'm going to try it one more time, and then I'll just take the authors out and be content. Oh, I know why the authors isn't. Now for authors, select B. That actually should be all right. As I said, we'll just take authors out if that doesn't work. All right, get books by author. It's going to fail again. I can tell by how long it's taking. All right. So let's just take the authors out of here. And just make sure it works with book info. And I'll leave it as is if it works. I shouldn't explore in front of everybody probably, but so worst case scenario, I'll go back to book and we'll leave it the way it was because that did work. And what we'll do is I'll post this, and Thursday will be an open lab, and you can have also the rest of this time unless you want to go have an early lunch. Might fail even with book info, so we might have to go back to book. All right, let's just go back to book because that worked. Everywhere where I have book info, I'm just going to cut it back to book. Yes, an author could have multiple books, so it should be able to. So this one too, we need to get rid of the short date string. We need to change the interface back. So the interface, change this back to book. Do I have any authors that have? So I want to stop that. That's not going to run. I'm going to look at books. Or, so do I have anyone that is in 2 or more books? No. Let's add, well, I'm going to add another one. Okay, and then ISBN is just going to be garbage. Okay, so I've added a book. The author's already in there. I think the author, is 11. So under author book, no, I didn't want to do that. So the author is 11. The book is also 11. So it'll be 1111 in author book. Come on. I just want to make sure, see if it'll return multiples. Okay. That's the cheating way to enter data. Okay, so go to the service. I'm going to see if it works, and then we'll be done. And I'll post it. I'll comment a bit, and I'll post it. So this worked before, so it should work now. It should return more than one book if there's more than one book. Yeah, so it returned 2 books. So it returned Neverwhere, and it returned American Gods. Which is on TV on Stars now. All right, so I will post this, and you can have, as I said, the next bit of time to work. I'll try to troubleshoot a little if you need to, and Thursday will be an open lab. The assignment is pretty close to this, and the code that you did for the last assignment, a lot of it you can almost just paste into here. Right, it's just in a different structure, different context, but the code is almost identical. So let me just go through and comment a little bit, and then I will post up to GitHub again. See ya. Oh, you're okay.
I don't know exactly what I did, but I got the registration page to work.
Oh, okay, good.
But now it's the list, the donation list that's not working, and it says something about daytime conversion.
Oh, so if you have a date, you probably have to convert it to a string. Yeah, I wonder what you did.
I have no idea. I have no idea what's
I couldn't see anything.
Systematics, you don't get anything as much happens.
Yeah.
Results.
Oh, you know what, I think we have to do a couple. There's a couple of things. So let's do, under the condition.
So he got he got first. This is gonna be.
I was on cast.
I think it goes. Probably looks like one of the shades.
No,
Yeah, you're fine. You might have to reload it. Usually keep this as a.
Okay, so it works.
Yep. Okay, so I'm just about ready to post this. I was just finishing commenting it. All right. All right, so I think that's good enough for comments. I'm going to save all. And I am going to I logged in, seem to be. Okay. I think the only thing that will have changed here. I think the only two files that will have changed are these two. So the files that we just did are up on the GitHub. I am going to I want to delete that project. Yeah.
Thank you, Steve.
Yeah, no problem. I'm glad it worked. As I said, I couldn't see anything wrong with it. It may have just, did you restart by any chance?
No. Oh, I might have exited Visual Studio. Got
Yeah,
that.
that's what I'm thinking. It might have been a Visual Studio error, and nothing to do with this code.
Okay, yeah, because it just magically started working. I didn't
Yeah.
know what I did, so, or if I did. Thank you, Steve.
No problem.
Ask you a question.
Sure.
Am I just stuck? Like not doing anything?
Oh, yeah, I'm not sure I can do other than to say wait.
Yeah.
Like I need to.
Starting virtual machine. I mean, you could try to kill it and start it again,
So I tried to.
but it's actually in a pause. It's in a
Yeah, because I tried to kill it and it said that it was busy.
right. But yeah, I'm not sure if you want to kill it because it's restoring the state that it was in.
Yeah.
And if you kill it, you may kill it entirely.
Yeah.
What are you looking
I just have a quick question.
Sure,
So, I just want to make sure I have this sound right. So we're basically creating the same login and registration page as last time.
except
And then
in,
we're-
in the service. We're not building any web pages.
Okay, so we're gonna do it, open up the service and we're just gonna do pretty much what we did last time, but in the service.
Within the service. And then the next assignment, we will create web pages that talk to the service.
All right,
But this time, just the service, no, yeah, no web pages for that.
all right,
A lot of the code will be similar, almost the same.
all right, so what part of what we did last are we using for this?
So you'll do the data entities, but you'll do it with community assist. You'll create a WCF service and you put in the methods. So I'd have to look at the actual assignment. Whatever the methods it says to do. It'll be similar. It's just going to be using a different database.
Okay.
So if we go to, let's see, 172. So basically, we want the login, you want to be able to register like before. We're going to request a grant. So this, instead of a donation, this time there'll be a thing where you request a grant. So requesting a grant would be like another insert. I actually should show you, I might need to show you a little bit about that. And then viewing the grants.
Okay, so we're using the code from last time, but we're just putting it in the service page? The service
Right,
page?
in the service thing. This is a little bit different.
Okay,
I might need to show you.
okay. Sorry.
So, yeah, it's similar though. I mean, it's basically the idea is to build the service. I didn't want too much new code. As I said, requesting a grant might be a little bit new. I'll let you give out a shot at it and then I'll help you with that part.
Okay, all right,
Okay.
all right.